I thought just like, what is going on?
Yeah.
I do not have the coronavirus. Like that just can't be. Like I went to rehearsal because I didn't have the coronavirus. It just didn't seem like that was not my story. Like I've been washing my hands. I haven't been touching my face. I felt fine.
Hi guys. Obviously, this is a little bit of a different episode for Tell Me Everything. This is not our usual setup. I am back home in Georgia where I'm from because we are dealing with quite an uncertain time. Everybody is wondering how the coronavirus pandemic is going to impact them, impact their families, their health, their jobs, their stability, all of those things. So we had the opportunity to catch up with a very special individual named Joshua, who is one of the most joyful people I've ever met. And Joshua, unfortunately, has been suffering from COVID-19 for the past 2 weeks, but he took time out of his recovery to share with us a little bit about what his experience looked like, what his symptoms were, what it was like to go to the doctor to get tested, what it was like to be taken care of as a person who lives on his own, all of those things. So we're gonna share his answers with you guys and hopefully alleviate a little bit of the uncertainty going on right now. Tell us how you actually are feeling, both physically, mentally. Truly, how are you?
Yeah. How am I? I feel good today. I feel really good. This is like day 3 of kind of returning back to my normal self.
Yeah.
And so I've been in quarantine for I think 16 days now, about 16 days. I'm just yesterday was the first time I really got an understanding of what's happening outside my apartment, because I was just so sick that I couldn't really understand. Like I was reading stuff on the news that things are closing down. I was reading stuff in the news that the city's emptying out and that people are social distancing. And I sort of had an idea about that. But yesterday was the first day I was really able to go out. I put some gloves on and I went to the grocery store for the first time, which I was so excited about doing because I've only heard tales of it. And I stood outside in line at Whole Foods for like 15 minutes.
You joined the movement.
And I could not believe what I saw.
So for background, Joshua's career is really a very cool one. He, again, is unlike any person I've ever met in that he is a puppeteer, and he has his own show called The Joshua Show, which is sort of like a modern day Mr. Rogers.
You know, we just finished a 6-week North American tour to a handful of theaters around the country and into Canada. And we have some contracts coming up that I don't know what's going to happen with them. I had a show that was already canceled in Massachusetts, and that was my income for March. And so that's gone. And I have 2 other people that work for me. So as of right now, there's nothing coming up in terms of an income.
So Joshua said that he first started noticing that he was experiencing symptoms after returning from a tour that took him through Washington State and California. And he said at first it felt more or less like a chest cold. What was the process of you figuring out that you were sick, you suspecting that it was coronavirus? What did that look like for you?
So I have an interesting story. So it was 2 weeks ago on Tuesday that I started feeling what I thought was maybe some like debris in my lungs. I went out for a little walk with my friend, and we came back to the apartment, and I thought like, I have like some weird sensation in my lungs. And that was it. And I was supposed to go to rehearsal on Wednesday for this project I'm working on. And I woke up in the morning and was sick. Like I had like what I felt to be a chest cold and a little bit of a headache. And it's a very physical piece that I'm working on. And so I thought, no way, like we're going to be here all weekend. I need to take the day off and just take a rest.
Yeah.
And it felt like a chest cold. And I like really sat with myself, and I'm like, they said, if you're sick, don't go out. If you're sick, don't go out. And I was like, but I just have a chest cold. Like I've had chest colds. This feels nothing different than that. And so Thursday I woke up in the morning, I took my temperature. I had no temperature, no fever. And I went to rehearsal. I got on the subway. I went to rehearsal, spent the whole day with 7 other people in a theater. It was we were working with these larger scale puppets that was strapped onto my body, and it was very physical. And so by the end of the day, we got into the theater and it was freezing cold, and everyone was like, this is just unbearably cold. I was like, yeah, it is unbearably cold. And by the end of our hour-long run through with these puppets and all this physical activity, I was still freezing, and everyone around me was sweating. And they looked at me, and this guy came up to me and he said, you remember when we started this run and we were complaining how cold it was? And I thought, oh no, something is not right. And so I had to leave, and my head started hurting, and I had 102-degree fever when I got home.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And so I went to the doctor, and I went to the urgent care. Oh, no. And there's signs that said, like, if you have a fever and if you have a cough, there you go, please let us know and we'll give you a mask. And so I did that. And then I had to like sign these papers. And then as every place I went, someone was behind me disinfecting. And I'm like, what is going on? So they put me in this room with this doctor. This nurse came in, and she said, what are your symptoms? And I said, I have a cough and a fever. And she said, okay, have you been traveling at all? And I said, yes, I just finished a 6-week national tour. And she said, where have you been? And I said, I've been in Canada, Washington State, and California. And she immediately dropped her pen and left the room. And I didn't know. I thought her pen had run out of ink. I didn't think anything more than that. Nothing. And so I sat there with the mask on this table, and I waited so long that I fell asleep. And she woke me up with a full suit on from head to toe. And I was like, oh my God, what is going on? All I could think about was that last scene in E.T. And I was like, oh my God, what is actually happening? And she said, you were in Washington State where there was an outbreak. And so therefore we have to take extra precautions. And then she took this long Q-tip and had me blow my nose. And then she took this Q-tip and stuck it so far up my nose. And I couldn't help but like scream, sort of this screaming, like guttural, like I didn't know what to expect. And she had to do that 3 times, and one for the cold, one for the flu, and one for coronavirus.
The scariest part, I think, for me, honestly, was hearing about the extent of the symptoms on his body. I mean, it just absolutely leveled him.
So it took 40 hours to get the test back. And then it didn't get any better. I got worse. I got home and was just like coughing and coughing and coughing. I threw my back out because I was coughing so hard.
Are you serious?
Yeah. So the coughing was so intense that I had to like get on all fours to cough. I'd have to brace myself against a wall because it was, and like really open my mouth up to try to just gently cough, all while having a 102-degree fever. And my eyes started really, really hurting from all the coughing. And so I couldn't really move my eyes around very much. It felt like they were going to pop out of my head. And then my head started hurting, and I had no food. I had no medicine, and then had to start relying on my community to help me out.
That is just crazy.
And then no taste of smell. I have no sense of taste or smell for the past 2 weeks.
Talk to me about that, because I read that was kind of a symptom that people haven't really talked about very much, but you lose your sense of taste and smell very drastically. So what has that been like? So I lost it right away, and it wasn't until like maybe 8 days into me being quarantined that an article in the New York Times came out, and everyone started sending it to me saying, oh my gosh, you're seeing this. This is a sign. This is a symptom of the coronavirus. And yeah, it's been, a friend of mine, Joe Jordan, made me, he's like, we're going to get this back. So we're going to get lots of spicy foods in you. And I couldn't taste anything, like nothing. Really? So he would make something that was incredibly spicy, and I would just drink it on down. And then all of a sudden, 3 minutes later, I'm profusely sweating, but could taste nothing. And he's like, you drank that? I was like, it's gone. He's like, that was so spicy. Another huge aspect about this whole situation that I feel like a lot of us are dealing with is this sort of looming fear and guilt of, what if I have the virus, but I don't know it, and I pass it on to someone else? And that's something that I really struggled with over the last couple of weeks, having traveled from New York down to Georgia earlier on in this whole process, because you just don't know. And so I asked Joshua about that, especially knowing that he had gone to rehearsal and he went on the subway. What was that like? Yeah, even when I was waiting for the test, I just thought,
this can't be, like, this really, like, this isn't gonna be. And then I got the test back, and I had to call the producer and say, I tested positive for the coronavirus. So then all 7 other puppeteers had to go into quarantine for 2 weeks, and the theater had to be shut down. And I was in a rehearsal the day previous to me getting my symptoms starting, in a separate rehearsal with my collaborator and my director. And my collaborator works at a restaurant in the West Village, and they had to shut down the whole restaurant 3 days early because of me being exposed to Jeb, and Jeb going into rehearsal, but Jeb going into the restaurant. So they shut the whole thing down. It was like, and I couldn't even deal with any of that. So all like the shame and the guilt that I was feeling about going against what at the early stages that the news was telling us not to go out, I didn't listen to that. I was so sick that I couldn't even, I didn't have the energy, or I didn't have the mental ability to really process what the repercussions of that would be, because I just had to focus on taking deep enough breaths and getting myself well, all alone in my apartment by myself.
I was also curious when talking to Joshua what it was like to actually cope with this illness while living by himself, because there are a lot of people, obviously, who are in the hospital suffering from this, but there's also a lot of people who are quarantined at home. So I asked Joshua what that was like.
It was an utter nightmare for me. I'm a total pack animal, and I really rely on physical connections with people and being in the same space with others. I'm a very social person, and so to have that stripped away from me was really, really hard. My best friend Jordan lives upstairs from me, and he sorry, this gets a little emotional. He helped me. He paid me 3 meals a day. And my cousins sent me a full bag of medicine. One night I had 102-degree fever, and I couldn't sleep, and I didn't know what to do. And so I went to sleep, and I woke up like 2 hours later thinking I had a full night's rest. And I was just so sick that I had to basically crawl to the kitchen because I was so dizzy. And I got on my phone, and my cousin had said, I just sent you a bag of medicine through Postmates, which I've never heard of before. And I would put a little mask on my gloves, and I went out right outside my door, and there was a full bag full of medicine for me, sent by my cousins. Yeah. And so, and then they, they kept sending me all sorts of things. That's amazing. And then Jordan was making me 3 meals a day. Yeah. I've been vegan for the past 2 weeks, thanks to Jordan, and he's very happy about that.
Thankfully, Joshua is no longer contagious, according to the guidelines that the CDC has put out.
And you said that you went to the grocery store the other day. So are you officially, you're not contagious anymore? You're just in the recovery process?
Yeah. I mean, according to the CDC and to my doctor, I'm no longer contagious. So they say 72 hours after your fever has broken, which has been over a week for me. Okay. And then if your other symptoms have decreased, which they have, I still have a cough, which I understand may last for another 2 weeks. Okay. But I mean, it's a cough that happens every few coughs in an hour, opposed to coughing consistently for an entire day of coughing and just spending little time just trying to not cough is where I was. So yeah, I'm no longer contagious. The question is, can I get this again? They don't know that.
Another thing that I've seen is that in the midst of all of this uncertainty, we're all sort of looking to each other for getting answers to our questions about what it's actually like to experience this virus. But even Joshua, who has had this absolutely horrible experience over the last 2 weeks, says he doesn't have all the answers.
And people have been reaching out to me as their comfort, being like, I have a cough and I have a fever. What do I do? And I'm like, I don't know. I just have this thing. You don't get downloaded with knowledge with this. Like,
right.
I say, we just don't go out, I guess. I don't know. And people, it's real anxiety of people not knowing what to do and there not being enough tests.
Yeah.
And then just all the misinformation out there. So during this whole thing, everyone's an expert on how to cure me of the coronavirus. And there's like, you should do this, you should do this, you should hold your breath for 10 seconds was something that if you can hold your breath for 10 seconds, it means you don't have the coronavirus, is what they were touting on the internet like 2 weeks ago, it was all over. And I held my breath, and that was one of the things that encouraged me to go to rehearsal that day. Because I thought, oh, well, I can do this. And even after I got sick, my aunt was like, well, if you can hold your breath for 10 seconds, isn't that right? I was like, no. I currently have 102-degree fever, and I'm going to give you a 10-second pause here. And I held my breath, and I was like, that's not real.
Yeah.
So there's that. But now that I'm like exiting quarantine, people are now experts on how to do that. I'm like, you're contagious for another 3 weeks. And I'm like, well, then why aren't we quarantining people for 5 weeks? Where did you hear that? Oh, someone at work told me that. And I'm like, we can't be spreading this around. We can't be playing this game. This is a dangerous game to play, especially if people have any following online and they start saying this, then it's just like, it gets out of control.
So all in all, even after having this absolutely harrowing experience with this illness, Joshua still feels extremely optimistic about what the country is going to look like on the other end of this pandemic. And you know, it's obvious that in the here and now, we have to support the people who are sick, and we have to support their families, and we have to support the doctors and nurses who are on the front lines of treating them, as well as all of the essential workers who are still going into work and serving our communities. But for Joshua, when you zoom out, there is still light at the end of this tunnel.
Like, we have to come out of this better. We have to come out of this more kind. We have to come out of this in a way that we slow ourselves down and we really connect with ourselves and wonder and really question, how can we be living our best lives as we've all been in our isolation, and hopefully leave this with a long list of things we're grateful for, and we go and just fill ourselves up with those things. Yeah.
Totally agree.
We just gotta.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope that we have answered at least a couple of your questions about what's going on in the country right now and what this illness actually looks like. But in the meantime, feel free to like, subscribe, comment, tell us how you're feeling about all of this, and we'd love to talk to you guys. Thank you guys for watching.